In the silence of the everfree forest, near a dry patch of ground that barely counted as a path, a low rumbling began. With relative smoothness despite its girth, a slab of stone as wide as two ponies, and half, again, as tall, began to swing outwards. From the darkness inside came the sound of cranks and levers creaking, as well as the soft clops of hooves on stone. The cold night air carried with it the stench of rot, but the captain still found it welcoming. Beneath the decay and decomposition, there lay the rosy scent of freedom. "This doesn't mean I forgive you, you know." The captain didn't know why she said it. Maybe just because it all seemed too good to be true. "I don't expect you to," came the lilting voice from behind her. Soft footsteps brought Rarity up to her side, both ponies gazing at the darkened skeletons of the trees before them. The captain felt like she was pushing her own luck, but she had lived her life by now, having an explanation for every action. There just had to be a reason. "Why then?" she broke down. "Why let me go?" When no answer came immediately, the captain turned to look at the pony next to her. With the moon hanging low and orange on the horizon behind her, Rarity was little more than a shadowy silhouette. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "I'm tired of having to have an answer to every problem, of needing a reason for every action. For so long now, I've been ignoring every pony's lives and their happiness." She turned her head away from the captain, but her voice remained steady. "I don't even know if that makes sense anymore. It's all gotten very complicated, you understand, and maybe I wanted to give some pony their life back." "So, you feel guilty?" The captain answered her own question, turning her gaze back to the forest. There she had it, a reason, an explanation, an excuse. She could deal with excuses. They were all too normal to her. Her curiosity sated, the captain gave her wings an experimental flap, working out the cramps from lounging in a bed for so long. "I suppose so," Rarity added, ignoring the captain's motions of departure. "At least, in part. But that wasn't the only reason. Tell me, Rainbow, do you know about Trixie's spell that took away our unicorn magic?" The captain leaned forward, stretched her legs out. Glancing to her right, she could see the blackened eyes of the unicorn. They took up nearly all of her eyes, drinking in what little light the night had to offer. "Yeah, they were getting set to execute me when Trixie cast it. Why?" "I don't understand exactly what happened, but for some reason, every unicorn in our town fell unconscious when that spell hit us. Every single one of us, without exception, were beset by nightmares of the most horrendous sort." The captain paused in her stretching to look at her companion, who she now noticed, had begun to shiver slightly. "I dreamt of you, Rainbow Dash." The captain winced at the use of her name. Only one pony ever called her that anymore, and to hear it out of her enemy's mouth, it was a familiarity that she could do without. There was silence as the captain waited for her to elaborate, but Rarity only offered a lilting laugh. "Why release you? Why not torture you for information, or use you as a bargaining chip? Because, Rainbow, for better or worse, I've stepped down from that stage. Even if it kills me, no, especially if it kills me, I'm not throwing another life into that mob." She squared her shoulders as the last of the shivers passed through her. "I thought that the generous thing to do would be give the ponies what they wanted, no matter the cost to me. But I was wrong. Celestia, I was so wrong. Generosity isn't just giving. It's helping others. Giving them what they needed instead of what they want, if you will." The captain brought a hoof to her chin, brow furrowed. "I don't understand," she admitted. The wind whistled through the trees as the unicorn gathered her thoughts. "What I mean to say, Rainbow Dash, is that not every pony wants to survive by any means necessary. Sometimes, perhaps, it is better to live briefly and well than survive forever in squalor and fear. And what about the ponies who would rather die or live than die? I'm not making the choice for them. I'm only giving them the choice. That's the most generous thing I can do, I think. But if we win this fight, it will be by our own convictions, not our compromises. The captain realized that the mare next to her was standing taller than than ever she herself was. Behind her, the darkness of day had begun covering the moon, making the sky seem sideways with an off-angled lean. "And what if you don't win?" she asked, cutting the silence. For the first time, Rarity smiled. "And then I will die with pride that I have left." "I'm not really sure about this, Rainbow Dash." Twilight walked down the street, her head swinging from side to side to look at the quiet houses around her. Ahead, the town center stood empty and silent. She swallowed hard, but the lump in her throat refused to go away. "Look, Twi, I know it sucks to be wrong, but there's a lot at stake here." Rainbow Dash landed softly beside her friend, folding her wings at her side. "After all we've been through, apologizing should be a snap." Twilight nodded, fixing her gaze ahead and forcing her hooves to keep moving. "She's right," she admonished herself. "I've apologized to my friends back home plenty of times. I certainly have no trouble admitting my own faults. So why is this so hard?" The obvious answer arose in Twilight's mind, just as it had when the last time she asked herself the same question, as well as the time before that, and the time before that. She wasn't wrong. Applejack was, and she was still going to have to apologize for it. "Fine," she told herself for the 100th time. "Dash is right. There are more important things than being right, and keeping your pony alive is one of them. Plus," she added with a sigh, "we need all the elements of harmony if this plan is to work." Twilight slowly came to a halt in front of the office, gulping again. For all the logical sense that her plan made, her reassurances weren't doing her much good. What if Applejack didn't want to listen? What if they hadn't saved their elements of harmony? How would they find them? Even if Applejack and Rarity had theirs, what about Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy? What did the captain do with hers? What about mine? Twilight panicked, casting another glance over her shoulder. Oh, Celestia, where do we even begin? A noise from in front of her made Twilight's head whip around, only to catch a glimpse of Rainbow Dash as she disappeared through the door. Sighing, Twilight forced herself to place one hoof in front of the other. "I guess we begin here. I just wish the first step wasn't so difficult." The inside of the office was still a mess from the chaos of Trixie's spell. The table that had its leg broken off lay still upturned in a corner, irreparable without any spare wood. Much of the furniture that ponies would lounge in while waiting the audience had been righted hastily, but not moved back to their proper places, forcing Twilight to weave around a few chairs and a dark, stained couch. If Twilight hadn't known any better, she'd have thought the building was abandoned. Her ears perked up as she heard the sound of a voice coming from the stairwell, and though she couldn't make out words, she found the tone immediately familiar. Applejack was talking to some pony upstairs, and with the lobby empty, it was clear to where Rainbow Dash had gone. Taking a few deep breaths to calm her heart, Twilight ascended the stairway. "In jail for what you did, but I reckon you'd like it there anyway, with your damn traitor friend for company." "Hey, we're just here to talk." "We're? Don't tell me you brought that rabble-rousing..." The floor beneath Twilight creaked as she came up the last step, making Applejack's head swing around. Twilight locked eyes with the orange face, and for just an instant she could see her friend's eyes widen as her features softened. A moment later, however, the Earth Pony's brow was knitted as she stomped on the ground. "Great. Just great. The two ponies I didn't need barging in my barn door open today. I reckon you worked on another half-baked plan to get two more of our fellow guard ponies killed. Or were you just stopping by to let me know how wrong and pathetic I was for trying to help every pony?" Dash stomped her own hoof. her wings flaring out. "Hey! I nearly got killed trying to fight for your town. I think you ought to be thanking me." For a moment, Applejack had whirled and butted heads with a Pegasus. "What I ought to do is arrest the both of you for treason, seeing as you let the damn captain of the Shandabolts nearly kill Rarity, and then try to incite a riot." "Girls, please!" Twilight yelled. Both mares turned to her, and instantly the lump in her throat had returned. "Applejack, I'm sorry." "Well, ain't that just dandy?" Applejack replied instantly. "You're sorry, I'm sorry, the whole damn town is sorry. Don't fix a darn thing, Sugar Cube, and I don't have time to waste on this nonsense." She turned away from the other mares, making her way towards Rarity's desk. "Why don't you make yourselves useful, and make good on your promise to stay out of this office here?" "I didn't promise—" Twilight caught herself, refusing to bite on the Earth Pony's bait. Shaking her head, she walked further into the room to stand next to Dash. "Look, Applejack, when I said those things, I was really angry, and I really didn't mean them." "Oh, like hell you didn't. Now who's the liar? I know a big head when I see it, Sugar Cube, and yours was never bigger than when you gave me that there lecture." Twilight winced. She had thought apologizing would be the hardest part, but she should have known that getting Applejack to accept would be a challenge in and of itself. She was right, though. She was quick to remind herself. "I don't believe in what I'm saying, and Applejack's lie was wrong, and I'm sticking to it." With a groan, Twilight realized the hypocrisy of her own thoughts. "Fine," she had admitted with an exasperated breath. "You're right. I still think you were wrong to lie to the townspony, and I honestly don't think that you're fit to lead any pony, much less an entire town." Twilight reeled her temper in before she went too far, noting that Applejack's face was no longer bristling with indignation. "But under the circumstances, I can see why you would have lied." Twilight bit her cheek as Applejack remained silent. "I don't like it at all, but I know you were just trying to help, and I guess I can't hold that against you." Twilight continued to fill the silence. "Honestly." Twilight kept her gaze locked with Applejack, refusing to be the first to avert her eyes. It was Applejack who finally snorted, pawing at the ground as she looked away. "I'm still not sure if I like what I'm hearing, Sugar Cube," she admitted. "But I do believe you." "Then you forgive me?" Twilight brightened, unable to keep the excitement out of her voice. "Course not," Applejack said flatly, making Twilight's ears droop. "But like I said, I got more important things to worry about. If you're serious about helping, and I mean actually helping," she glared at Rainbow Dash for a moment, "then I guess I ain't gonna turn you away." Twilight bit her lip as she weighed her options. "Good enough," she settled. "Now, can we get on with finding the elements?" Do the what now?" Applejack questioned the obvious disdain. "Allow me to explain," Twilight offered. Taking a deep breath, Twilight mentally pictured her plan laid out in a simple, ordered list. The elements of harmony didn't work in this world because your Rainbow Dash wasn't loyal, causing the spark to never appear, which caused the element of magic to never appear, which, through a long and vague but directly related series of events, caused this world that we're now in, as opposed to the one that Dash and I are from. Rainbow Dash raised the point that there are two of us here, the roles of magic and loyalty are once again filled, and that the original situation of gathering the elements is possible again. If you, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie still have your elements, we can defeat Number Moon. Twilight finished that with one last breath, leaving her panting. Applejack hadn't moved a muscle since she began, but her eyes shifted from the panting Twilight to the expectantly hovering Rainbow Dash. "You mean them glowy necklaces?" she finally replied, waving her hoof in a small circle. "Those are the ones," Rainbow Dash cheered. "We're going to use the glowy necklaces to defeat Nightmare Moon." It was more of a statement than a question, as if Applejack couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Yeah, when you put it on like that, it sounds bad," Dash admitted, letting herself fall to the ground. But it totally worked for us, so it's gotta work here too. It didn't work the first time, Applejack pointed out, crossing her hooves as she leaned on her desk. Well, yeah? Dash faltered. But, like Twilight said, you've got the captain to thank for that. The elements themselves worked fine. Applejack glanced at both ponies, her eyebrows raised. All right, she offered tentatively. Let's say I bought into this little plan of yours. What would I have to do? Well, you'd need to embody the spirit of honesty, Twilight began, stammering as she realized she'd hit a sore note. And we'd need the necklace that you got. Applejack put a hoof to her chin as she gazed at the ceiling. I don't know about Rarity, she pondered, but I haven't seen mine in months. Twilight's gut dropped, and she could see Dash's shoulders immediately droop. For Celestia's sake, she cursed, why can't we just have one break? Why must every plan fail before it begins? Well, do you know where it is? Dash asked, making Twilight blink. Applejack kept her hoof to her chin. I reckon it's still in my barn in Sweet Apple Acres, where I left it. It was the only place I really stopped moving between that night and the attack. On the one hoof, Twilight felt bad for dredging up painful memories. On the other, she wanted to leap for joy at restored hope. This is perfect, she exclaimed, unable to hold herself back. We've already got 3 ponies and know where one element is, and we've only just started. She looked around at the next obvious question came to mind, prompting her to quickly scan the room. Applejack? Where's Rarity? There were a lot of things that Big Mac never did. He slowly brought the glass to his mouth, because he never hurried. Discipline was an essential part of working on a farm, and even more so to leading a police force. Plus, it had been his experience that when things get done, they got done on their own time, and not a moment sooner. As the burning faded from his throat, he cracked a grin at the red earth pony sitting across the table from him. Though he rarely ever laughed, smiling was hardly out of the question. For his own part, the other pony was in stitches. He thumped his thick hoof against the desk, making the bottle of brandy shake. Wiping a tear from his eye, he collected his breath, enough to form words. Oh, Celestia. So when she said plot, what she really meant was, yep. Big Mac finished for him, pouring himself another cup. The pony had to place a hoof on the chair beneath him to keep himself from falling off, collapsing into another fit of bellowing laughter. Big Mac just held his drink, waiting for the urge for another sip to come. With just one other pony in his office and plenty of brandy, there was no need to rush things. As the other pony's laughter faded again, he took an apprehensive look around the office. Oh boy, Big Macintosh. Let me just thank you right now for the drinks and the company. I haven't laughed like that in months. I figured I owed you one. A drink for watching my back out there earlier was all. Got more booze than I rightly know what to do with, to tell you the truth. Big Mac drained his glass, savoring the flavor of fine apple brandy. Pouring himself and his companion another glass, he leaned back in his chair. And by the way, Four Pony, Big Mac is fine by me. The Four Pony scoffed. Ha! As if that job has any meaning anymore. Just call me Red. Red reached forward to grab his glass, swirling the liquid in the bottom pensively. And I think I owe you more than you owe me, to be fair. Well then, how about you help me get through this here bottle, and we call it even? Big Mac grabbed his glass, raising it into the air. Don't worry, I've got your back there. Red cracked, his own grin, as he raised his glass, clinking them together. Red set the table long before Big Mac's, giving him time to look around the office. It was sparse, to be sure. The chair Red sat in had to be dragged over from the only other table in the room, which was placed by the fire. Though the fire now burned low, Red suspected it had never gotten very big to begin with. More than likely, he mused, it was used for more practical purposes than mere lighting or heating. His gaze swung to the opposite wall, where the silhouettes of the two workhorses were thrown by the light of the fire. Most of the wall was bare, but just slightly off-center were over a dozen pictures of ponies. None of them Red recognized. By the time Big Mac lowered his glass, Red's gaze was locked inquisitively on the collage. "Fine ponies," Big Mac supplied, his gaze only lingering briefly on the wall. "Fine ponies. Every one of them." The room was silent as the 4-pony looked back at his glass, staring at the empty bottom. Red opened his mouth to ask what his companion meant, but stopped as his eyes caught one of the pictures. Leaning in slightly for a better look, the photo of 2 uniformed Pegasus guards tickled his memory. And then the memory hit. A charred body and a dismembered wing. Folding black sheets over one of those faces as he limped back into New Ponyville, Big Mac holding the other slung over his back, the Rainbow Pegasus being led in on a stretcher. Red jumped slightly as a thud brought him back to reality, listening as Big Mac poured himself another glass. I don't know what to say, to be honest." "Nothing left to say, I reckon." Big Mac turned his own gaze towards the collage, his face unreadable. "They all knew the risks." "I'm sorry," Red said automatically, not sure what he's apologizing for. "Nah, it ain't like that." This time, Big Mac did look at the wall, studying the photographs. Through the fire against the far wall was only dimly lighting the photos. He could remember every line and hue by heart. "Those ponies wanted to fight," he continued methodically. "But shadow bolts and royal guards ain't the only thing to worry about. For some of them, helping to defend the town gives them a purpose, something to wake them up every day. For some ponies, though, it just ain't enough." His gaze dropped to his own glass, the liquid writhing, sitting still as a lake. His own reflection shone vaguely in the bottom, his heavy jaw frowning slightly. "I know what you mean. I don't know about fighting and all that, but about the purpose thing." The 4-pony collected himself, placing his glass down on the table. "My colts have been processing wood, food, and raw material since we got here. Now most of that stuff is completely gone. I've told my boys to stop calling out roll calls, since most ponies don't bother showing up anymore, and those that do don't need the reminder." He shook his head, making the clicking noise with his mouth. "That's why I said my job doesn't mean anything anymore. We've got nothing to do but wait around all day for shipments we know aren't coming. Hell, I could play hooky tomorrow, and it wouldn't mean a damn thing." "I ain't all that worried about tomorrow," Big Mac shrugged. "It's today I'm concerned with. That Trixie filly is coming with who knows how many ponies, and I honestly don't know how we're going to stop her with the forces we got." "You taking recruits?" Red asked, his ears pricking up slightly. "I suppose," Big Mac continued, without missing a beat. "But that's not what I mean. Sooner or later, every pony's going to be fighting, if they get in the main cavern." "And you think they will?" "I know they will. Yeah." Both ponies remained silent as Big Mac filled their drinks, casting a longing look at the dying fire. Red coughed politely, dragging his attention back. "So," he asked with shoulders slumped, "you got a plan?" Big Mac shrugged, taking a final sip of his glass. A long time ago, ponies would poke fun at him for only ever sipping his drinks. Months later, Big Mac would spare a smile for them as he pointed to his well-stocked liquor cabinet, where theirs had run dry. "I leave the planning to my sister, mostly." He drained the rest of his cup, putting the glass down a little harder than he meant to. "We just gotta hold out as long as possible, is what I reckon." "Sounds like as good of a plan as any, to me," Red answered. "If you're serious about recruiting, though," Big Mac said, I'm sure I can find use of a brick horse, like yourself. Red shrugged, his massive shoulders heaving nonchalantly. Heh, well, 5 years of hay baling will do that to a colt. But yeah, I'm serious about it. It's not like I've anything left to lose, right? I'll drink to that. Big Mac almost chuckled. No, you won't. Red pointed a hoof at the empty bottle, raising his eyebrows questioningly after a moment. Big Mac stared at the empty bottle for a moment. On the one hoof, the brandy he had was the only brandy he was going to have for a while. On the other hoof, there was no sense in saving what he was never going to spend. Finally, he pushed his chair out from behind him and stood. Plan for the worst, he advised as he made his way to the liquor cabinet. That way, all your surprises will be pleasant ones, Red finished, smiling genuinely as he held out his glass for a refill. A few moments later, both colts were seated in the desk again, Big Mac's glass replaced by a far larger mug. The chime of clinking glassware split the silence as both ponies made a silent toast, deliberately not worrying about tomorrow.